Yeah, because you never see an unhappy dog, do you? In the nicest way.
Welcome to today's Woodpecker WODCast with Charles and Joe. I'd like to introduce Efrem. Welcome to What About You? This is our Woodpecker WODCast where we're going to talk all things fitness, challenges, mental health, probably most of 2020 and a few years prior to that as well, and just kind of share some stories and just kind of to get your side of things at the moment. So Efrem, how are you doing? How's lockdown treating you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. I was one of those people that I suppose when it first started, nearly a year ago, back in March last year, I was probably relatively unaffected because I have what you'd call an unconventional work habit in that I work from home most of the time anyway. That sort of side of thing didn't really affect me too much. It's obviously had an impact with all sorts of other aspects in terms of what you do on a daily basis and the opportunity just to go out and do stuff that now seems like a million years ago. My wife's a nurse, so she's an NHS nurse, so she's busy. She's been working ever since. So, yeah, it's impacted everybody, hasn't it? And most detrimentally. I don't think anyone's had a positive experience from it. There has been positives that have come from it, but overall I think it's been a challenge for all of us.
Down 3.0. The first one, summertime, laps around the local field or something. That, I completely utilised that time. I would say I was completely blessed to be furloughed and have 6 months of playtime as an adult. It was fantastic while the world kept spinning. Lockdown 2 in November. It was hard. It was short. It was sharp. But this one here, when you kind of know there's no end in sight, that's really getting to me a bit. Not to the point where I'm starting to worry about my mental health, but I can just feel that there's things that I am really missing. That interaction at the gym, the going to the pub with your mates. It's when it's 4:00 in the afternoon and it's dark, and you can't just go for a walk. You can't just go outside. It's raining. Then it really starts impacting things. So yeah, lockdown.
I agree with you. I think the first one was that it was almost, I'm not going to say it was fun, but there was an aspect of the unknown. So it was a novelty for all of us, wasn't it? And there's literally, the roads were empty. Nothing was happening. I'd never known anything. I don't think any of us had ever known the country like it. So it was a novelty. The weather is probably one of the best summers we've ever had. So like you say, you can get outside, do stuff. I remember doing daily exercise outstairs, and it's an absolute joy to do it, listening to the birds and stuff. There's no planes going over. The skies are great. Yeah, so I think we all probably thought at that point, this isn't actually that bad, and I'm sure a few months' time will be all right, and it will just sort of gently peter out like a lot of these things have done in the past. In the UK, things like SARS never really affected us to the extent that it did in other parts of the world. So there was always that, and you kind of think, I can do this. Like say, people were furloughed, so they were in effect being paid to be at home, which is nice, and people got a chance to recharge their batteries and do a lot of the things that perhaps they'd forgotten or ignored because of the pressure of work and everything around it. So I think it was a good thing. As you said, the second one in November was a bit of a weird one because it changed so much just before that sort of huge panic before Christmas. I mean, we had all sorts of plans to go and see our daughter. She's located in Essex at the moment, so we were going to go up there for the first time. She left home just before lockdown 1. So we were really looking forward. She was going to host us at her house, but obviously that got thrown in the bin at the later stages. So we had Christmas on our own for the first time in, I can't remember how many years. So it was really weird. But kind of accepted it on the basis of, well, that's the way it is. And again, hopefully you kind of thought things would change. But now I think things are so much harder when you don't see the end or you can't imagine the end, and it just keeps drifting and it just keeps drifting. And when I took part in the Channel 4 thing, SAS Who Dares Wins, when you see an isolated exercise and you see people do it, you think, what are they moaning about? What's the problem? Why are people giving up? It's because they didn't know how long it was going to last. When you go to a gym class or you do something, there's always a target. So even if it's that 10-mile run thing we did, Charles, just before Christmas, you knew when you get to mile 10, you've finished, and then you've just got those 150 burpees. But with this, you never knew how long it was going to get. No. Now, I remember we had one day, we ran out of the camp, and there was a coach sat there idling, a huge single-decker coach thing, and we all piled into the coach. And they drove us through. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning, so it was pitch black. We never really knew what was happening. We parked up and we stayed there for ages. And then eventually they took us into this disused hangar. We had the sparring thing. Now, the following day, they got us up at the same time. We ran up. There's the coach sat there idling. Of course, we just went straight past this coach. And the amount of people that broke because they thought, we'll run, then we'll get on the coach, then we can chill. But we couldn't, so we just kept running past this. And me, for one, I was like, oh my God, it's horrendous. And it just kept going and going. And that's the thing, you just never knew how long it would last. And if you don't know how long things last, it plays havoc with your brain because you're trying to quantify things down into those shorter periods of time. And if you do think too long and hard about things, it can be a little bit overpowering. I say, what if this goes into February? What if it goes into March? What if it goes into April? And so on and so on. You have to try and sort of stay in that moment. I'd say all the time, try and live a little bit more like a dog. So you're just dealing with it in the here and now, today. This thing that we're doing now. Yeah, because you never see an unhappy dog, do you? In the nicest way. You don't. So if you can,
I can't believe
if you can compress it. Well, they wag their tail when you give them a stick, don't they? So if you can compress it down to that, and I know it's not always practical, but in those times when things are, I just try and bring it all back to the here and now. And often you'll find that those things just generally sort of leave your mind.
Yeah, from that is just, and the story then just went from, we were talking about lockdown to becoming a dog via Ecuador, just in in about.
Welcome to my brain.
So for those of you who don't know that will end up listening, Efrem, you were on SAS Who Dares in 2016, I believe it was.
Yeah, so we flew out May the 1st, which is my birthday, 2016.
And is it everything that you thought it would be from the, let's say, having watched it previously?
It's nothing, the experience I had was nothing like what I expected. Now, the difficulty, I did the second series, so there wasn't really much, there was one series to watch. But we knew we were going to Ecuador eventually. They told us about a month before because we had to get all sorts of jabs, yellow fever and the like. And I can't remember the exact illness that was going around in Brazil and South America at the time. It was a mosquito infection that was passed on. You'll remember, I can't remember the name of it, which infected women and then affected them if they had kids. So there was a duty of care to tell people that, if your girlfriend's wife or if you're planning on getting a pregnancy, you have an issue with this to worry about. So they actually told us about a month before we went. So we knew we were going to Ecuador. There was also an earthquake, I think about 2 months before we went out there, which threw it into a little bit of upheaval. So the logistics for it from the production team were really bad. So we were supposed to have dry kit to sleep in and wet kit to go out in, but the dry kit never turned up, so we lived in wet kit for the first 2 or 3 days. Now imagine sleeping in wet pants, wet socks. They're not just wet, they're covered in sand, and because when the Amazon floods or the cesspits flood, you got human waste that you're swimming and walking through as well. So that was all over you, so you stank. And every time you get a cut or a bruise, and you did all the time, because everything in the jungle wants to hurt you. It protects itself against everything. So I remember coming down a really steep bank once, and I had to grab hold of a tree trunk to save myself from falling over. This tree trunk had 2 or 3 inch needles on it just to protect itself, which all went into my hand. They didn't particularly hurt, so I picked the needles out, but of course then there was open cuts, and then you go in the water and they become infected. So what it went to the extent was all my fingernails and my hands lost all movement. So I couldn't, for example, do my fly up, close the button on my trousers, do my shoelaces up, so someone had to help me do that. So you're sort of kind of always incapacitated, and that's the stuff that you don't see when you watch it on television. Added to that, as I say, the kit didn't turn up on time. We had issues with the microphones that rub, and everyone had scabs and sores all over them, and the food never turned up. It was just horrific. But it was a great experience because I will never have the opportunity to do that again. And we got to abseil out of helicopters and all sorts of wonderful things, and go to a place in the world which I will probably never go back to. Ecuador was never on my list of holiday destinations, but it's great to have been there because it's an interesting place. It's a really unusual place, and it was really enjoyable. So when you see it on the TV, and as I say, when you see people giving up because they can't hold a rock over their head, and you kind of think, well, surely they can just carry on. But they probably held that rock over their head like 150 times already during the middle of the night, because that's the thing, they get you up in the middle of the night for no reason, and they come over and say, right, get ready, we're going out in half an hour. So you get dressed. As I say, getting dressed is a chore because you can't get dressed without somebody else's help. And then they'll come over and go, change your plans, go back to sleep. And of course, your adrenaline's kicking in. You can't go back to sleep because you know that any minute they're going to come back and go, change plans, we're going out again. So you're permanently on that sort of on the edge all the time, you overthink these things. If someone says to you, do something, you go, are you telling me to do that because you want me to do that, or is there more to this? Are you going, you over analyze things, which is again where I use that. I just got myself in dog mode and just did whatever someone asked me to do. I did it, and I just didn't worry about anything that was going on around me. And just my theory was, if someone asked me to do something, I'll do it. Hopefully, I'll be all right, and we'll go from there. But if you don't have that attitude, there's no point in doing it. So it was a great experience. I'm really glad I did it, but it's so much more difficult than you see when it's edited down.
I don't know whether I'm pleased to hear that or not. It's one of those, I'm 30 now, so I've grown up watching it, and every year I'd go, oh, I wish I could do that. That's right up my street. The physical, the mental toughness. Like, I just really want to go out and give it a bash. But it's not until you hear someone say it's because they try to make it look as horrible and as dirty and as sleep depriving as possible, but it's not until you speak to someone who's actually been there and experienced it to the very nth degree that you go, hang on a minute, no, that does sound really intense, I mean,
but it's the other aspects of it, because where there was 25 of us and we were told to turn up at Heathrow Airport, whatever time it was early in the morning, the flight. We flew from Heathrow to Madrid, from Madrid to Quito, and then from Quito into the middle of nowhere in the jungle. So there's 25 guys around you, and the only reason you know is because we all had to turn up in these boots. So you sort of scout around, and I'm sat there thinking, I'm 5'9". This guy's like 6'5", peak physical, like triathletes, and you're sat there going, what the hell am I doing here? I'm not being funny. It's crazy. You do think, you sat there going, you are an idiot, and this is you. You've gone too far this time. You've definitely picked up more than you can chew. But it's a great experience, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. And it's not even the individual challenge or what you're doing at the time. It's just relentless. So it's all the time. And when you get older, like me, I was 44 when I did it. It's the lack of recovery. So you'll do something and you'll fall asleep and you'll wake up and your back is paralyzed. You're like a plank of wood. And these guys are jumping up and doing yoga stretches, and you can barely move. And you think, again, it's just relentless. But it's a great. Anyone who thinks that they want to do it should definitely try it, because it's a great experience.
Did it teach you as much mental resilience as you thought it would? Do you really
None
think...
at all for me.
No,
not for me. That wasn't something that really I was ever concerned about, because the background, which we'll no doubt touch on slightly later, when we lost James, there wasn't anything that anyone could ever do to me that would ever challenge me in the way that did and continues to do. So I was aware that my own resilience was pretty significant, and nothing. And added to that, it's basically fiction and none of it matters. It's not real life. If it were real life, it might be slightly different. But I think, like all of these things, if you've got, what you're going into, it's not real, and at any stage that you can drop out of it. It's like anything you do at the gym. If you set yourself a challenge and you're not going to kill yourself doing it, because that would just be stupid. You can tap out of it. Whereas real life situations aren't always like that, and you don't choose them. So those are the things that challenge you the most. Now, the biggest impact on me was definitely physically, because I didn't realise it when I was out there, and I had some health issues while we were out in the jungle. But I had prostate cancer at the time I was in Ecuador, and it's only through the health issues that I had out there that I was diagnosed almost 12 months later as having prostate cancer. I've had my prostate removed, and if I hadn't have been out there, I would have never have had the issues. They would never have found it, and I probably wouldn't be here now. So the physical impact on me was far greater. That's the most important thing for me. Is if I hadn't have done it, I'd probably be dead now, unless I found it some other way, fortunately. But I didn't. I don't think I would have done. So that's that's the biggest thing for me. But in terms of the mental resilience, real life throws you real challenges, and things like that they're not real. So for me, it's you can't, when they're doing stuff and I'm looking at them, it almost became funny sometimes. They sent us some pictures later for promotional purposes, and every picture of me has a stupid grin on my face. And I remember it being really horrific, but I'm grinning away because it's not real. It's not real. So you're just emotionally just soaking it all up. But it doesn't, for me, it didn't, that sort of side of it didn't really change, because it was like a little bit of light relief almost during that period, because it was only 3 years after we lost James. So it was like a nice bit of light relief in amongst all those difficult times that we'd had and we would have and we continue to have. So it was, I'm not going to say it's easy because that's wrong, but it was very different.
Well, I just analysing and listening to everything you're saying, and you are so right. There is nothing that we can't learn to deal with, having been through real life experiences. So we met through me doing the silly challenge in a gym that was going on 9 hours by the end. But like you say, because I knew a preconceived time of finish, or roughly, I could just work towards it. I just put one foot in front of the other. I rode a bit harder, cycled a bit faster. And it was okay because it was structured. I was in a controlled environment. The only pain was self-inflicted, and it was just about, can I just switch off and, if you like, use your state, go back to dog-like state. Just tell myself, keep just being happy, keep wagging the tail, and just keep moving through it. So when you then talk about other things you've been through, that this means that, SES almost doesn't compare to that in the absolute slightest. I think let's move slowly on to that. So 3 years later, you started up StrongMen, and was it July 19 you started?
Yeah, so I met Dan Cross, who's co-founder with StrongMen with me. I met him through the TV show. So again, another great reason for having done it, because if not, we'd never have met. Dan did the series after me, so he was in Morocco. We met through Ollie, one of the DS. He put us together. Dan had the idea that he wanted to try and put something together where we help people like ourselves who've been through bereavement, been through loss, but didn't necessarily want that conventional medication or counselling route, in connection with possibly, but not as the main focus. So we got together and we started chatting, and we both realised that we'd both used exercise, and we both put that sort of structure into our daily routines to help us really get ourselves through those difficult times. I mean, it was anything as simple as taking the dogs for a walk, to going for a run, to lifting some weights, that sort of side of things, to try and make sure you get out of bed at 7 o'clock, make sure you try and eat a little bit better, make sure you try not to go too heavy on the bevy. All of these things in themselves are facets that you just try and break down. And the one factor that was key in all of this was the exercise side of things. So you get up and go for a 5-6 mile run. You don't want to do that hungover and having had a curry the night before. So that all starts to bring it into.
Sounds like playing rugby in the early noughties.
Exactly. So that sort of brings it all. That's the catalyst that brings it all the things that are around it, like a big gravitational pull, is always around that side of things. And you can, when you do stuff like fitness and you challenge yourself, it does obviously make you feel better. You see progress, but most importantly, you build that structure into your day. And this is why it's so hard at the moment, because you can still build that structure in, but you don't have the facility necessarily to be able to do anything, because it's hard to go for a run in the dark in the rain. It's also, a lot of it becomes a social event as well, and I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing I'm missing, not just going to the gym, but it's the community side of things, where you see, like you say, when I saw you doing your thing, and I know, that ski erg is horrific, and just chatting as we were for 3, 4, 5 minutes, you take your mind off what you're doing. So there's a huge social element of it as well, and you get friendship groups and all the other things. There's a whole social aspect to it, which is so important. And you find that, or you found that through, you can people do go to the gym, headphones on, don't talk to anyone, go and do the thing and go home, and that's fine. But a lot of other people, there's a social element to it. It's the same with a running club, a tennis club, a rugby club. It's the social impact as well that is as important as anything else. So doing that exercise that Dan and I both did, we felt, you'd get chatting to people, and sometimes, and Dan in particular, he found when he's out on a run, he was more likely to open up to people around him, because you're not sat like we are eyeballing each other. It's literally you're both looking forward, going for a run, climbing a mountain, whatever you're doing. So what we wanted to do for StrongMen was bring that as part of the key ethos, and use that exercise side of things to create a relaxed environment where people could just chat freely and openly about their emotional concerns, and they'll feel more likely to do so, because there's nothing better than, as I say, climbing up a mountain, not looking at someone, but they're next to you, talking to you, all heading in the same direction. No one's looking at you, no one's checking your body language and all of this side of things that you're always concerned about when you go to counselling. Am I portraying something that's not true? It doesn't matter. So that aspect of it goes out the window, and naturally these conversations just evolve organically. So we wanted to have the physical side of things to create that relaxed environment and bring that whole that shared empathetic mentality together. So one thing Dan experienced through victim support, and I experienced through the military charity SAFA, was when you get into a room with people who have suffered similar experiences and similar challenges, naturally you're not the elephant in the room. There isn't that elephant in the room. People aren't talking about you. They're not feeling awkward about asking you things. And so when we get the guys in a group, they'll talk freely and openly, and we support them as we come back. So we put them into a WhatsApp group. We also get everyone together 3 months later as like a reunion thing, and everyone will support themselves when it comes to challenging dates or around difficult times like Christmas and stuff like that. We've now introduced our telephone-based peer support service, which we call Man to Man, which we've released really as a result of COVID, because we can't run our weekends at the moment, and for the foreseeable future we can't run them. So we needed to really reach out and try and help people in the here and now, be a bit more proactive about it, because in addition to the 50 or so guys we've had on the weekends, we had 100 planned for 2020. So four sets of 25, which have obviously all gone on hold, and we'll just shift back to whenever we can start them again. But we also had a waiting list beyond that of in excess of 800 people. So we knew we had to reach out and try and do something about it, because that list is just going to grow and grow and grow when we can't, service it. So Man to Man came about. But one of the key things is the guys that volunteer for us as our peer support volunteers are the guys that have been through the weekends. And it's amazing how we take a service where people contact us because they need help and support. We give them that through the weekends, and then they themselves are able to help and support other people further down the line. So it's an absolutely brilliant and simple process. You have an issue, you support that issue, you create more support, and then that addresses more people that need support. So it rolls on and on and on. Now, obviously, at the moment, we're limited with our volunteers because we can't run the weekends to get them. But the people that have now been through that, I think at some stage would probably be happy to volunteer to become volunteers themselves. We train them up, we do that properly and professionally, and then they go out and they support other people. So it's a really simple process. Everything is peer-based, because that's so important. It's like the chats we've had in the gym. It's like the chats we're having here. We're like-minded people with similar experiences, and we just understand that process. It's no different to football commentators or football pundits. Football pundits are always ex-players. Why is that? Because they've played football, so they know more about it. So people who suffer bereavement know what it's all about, so they can do it. So that's the whole peer-based thing. It's out there, it works, it's simple, and it's perfect. So that's what we've always tried to do, is keep everything peer-based. I mean, behind the scenes, there's a lot of professional safeguarding that goes into it. So we have clinical mental health supervision for all our volunteers. They help design the services. So it's all structured properly, but it's actually delivered by people like me, people like Dan, people like our volunteers who've walked the walk and talked the talk. And that gives trust straight away. So everyone that speaks to everyone knows that they've got that shared experience.
Well, I just, again, listening back to what you're saying, and we slightly touched on it last week with Amy, we're finding more and more people are confident in saying, I take strength from helping others. And it sounds like there's a really big ethos within your charity now where it just feels that natural progression that the person who is going through the bereavement is reaching out to you guys, then becomes the next support network for the person coming in behind them into the charity. And I bet you that person is then finding some strength from helping that next person come through. And it's something I've noticed through talking about mental health over the past 6 to 8 months. Every time I do, I take a little bit more confidence in what I'm saying, because I feel that I know that somewhere along the line it might impact someone for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or a lifetime. It might just only impact one person, it might do 100, whatever it is, but as long as it's positive, by me helping someone else, I'm also channeling how I'm feeling, and I'm feeling better for it in almost in like a selfless way. So it's incredible to hear that your charity is set up so nicely and beautifully, if you like, to help others, helping others. It's just unreal.
We try and empower people. That's exactly what you're saying. And with anything like this, it's like your experiences with mental health. Everything that you've experienced and everything you've used to help you through that is correct and it works for you. So you've become an expert in that and how it works for you. So no one can tell you otherwise. So you can confidently say to other people that this is what happened to me, this is how I'm coping with it, and this is how I'm moving forward. So you don't have to be Dr. Charles. You just have to be Charles who's experienced that. So you can rely on that to use that, and that empowers other people. And it also, as critical to any of these things, especially if you've been through a loss, and an unexpected loss in particular, is you have to give people purpose, and if that purpose is to help other people, then that's it's so cathartic, as you say, to be able to help other people definitely helps you. And I think that's one of the things that will probably come out of this whole lockdown thing is people have helped other people, whether it's shopping for elderly neighbours, whether it's whatever it is. You hope that stays, and you hope that ability to, or the wish to want to help out stays. We'll see if it does. I'm hopeful that it does. It's often like, when we get snow and all of a sudden you see your neighbours and you chat to your neighbours and you're out cleaning the path together and you've never spoken to them before. You think all of a sudden, because we're out here kind of backs together the wall stuff, it's that sort of that spirit and that interest. You think this is lovely. And then, of course, the sun comes out, we all go back into our houses and no one talks to each other. But it's just trying to keep that going. And it's to say, if you can reach out and help people, and people would say, Charles, you're a young guy, Charles, you're a strong, fit young guy. It's not just strongish, fitish, I say. But it can happen to anybody. Yeah. All these things can challenge anyone at any time in their lives. It can literally happen like that. And that's the thing about it. It literally can come out of nowhere. James went to Afghanistan in July 2013. It was a war zone. We had concerns. There was obviously a real element of worry. He'd been before, so we weren't as worried. So we we're sort of in that zone where, he is going to a war zone, the unknown can happen. But for other people like Dan went to work and his wife died. Nick, one of the guys that we supported, he lost 2 sons, one in a road traffic accident, one to a drug overdose, 2 years apart. These things can just come out of nowhere. So it can literally happen, and it will have happened to someone today, and it will happen tomorrow and the day after and the day after. So you've got to be realistic about these things. And with things like bereavement and loss, you've also got to accept that you can't bring that person back. Nothing you can do will ever change it. They've gone. And part of that, accepting that, is something that takes an awful long time, because, of course, you do anything. And as a parent, you think, I'd happily lay down my life if I could bring him back. And I would, 100%, as would Sharon, my wife. But we can't. So we have to try and make the best of what we have. And we have to try and slowly and steadily just move forwards. And as I say, with the blinkers on, wagging the tail, and trying not to think too far in the future. And I remember when we lost James, we thought, what we're going to do because it was October, what we're going to do on his birthday, which is the 22nd of December, what we're going to do at Christmas, what we're going to do on the year anniversary, what we're going to do before you know it, you're thinking 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ahead. And that's where you lose. And that's where you have to bring it back down, really, really do live in that moment, because that's such a challenge. I mean, he would have been 30 this year, in December. He died at 22. You think it seems incredible to look back and think he would have been 30 now. And you see people around of a similar age and his friends from school and colleagues and stuff, you think, bloody hell, they're married, they've got kids, they're this, that and the other. In the forces, they've been promoted. It's, if you think about it, it kills you. So you have to not think about it, as I say, and just try and literally put one step ahead of it, in front of the other when these things happen, and just go. And that's what I've been doing for the last 7 or so years. And with something like StrongMen, that's what we try and do when the guys are having difficult times. There's groups around them to help them, and just try and, with that whole support, it just makes things a little bit easier, because there's people who've experienced it. Some people will have experienced it many years in the past, some very recently, but all the relationships that everybody had with the people they've lost are all completely different, and the circumstances are all different. But there's always the same traits, there's always the same feelings, and there's always the same experiences. And it's that being able to use that group to help you is absolutely priceless.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing all the backstories to the people within the charity, it's very close to home at the moment for myself. I know we spoke the other day briefly about everything that was going on, and I know Joe, one of the things I don't want to bring you in on, but obviously you didn't have the best of lockdowns as well, my friend.
No. I think I lost my cousin, my nan and my mum last year, and I remember that period of time, and I wish I knew about StrongMen, and I wish I knew about Man to Man, because that would have been a phenomenal opportunity for me. But one thing that really was profound during that period of time was I wasn't the only person who lost someone. And I found that people would come to me and they would say, oh, I lost a distant relative, or, they're trying to compare bereavement. And I think, what I'm trying to say is, bereavement is irrespective of relation, and it's irrespective of trying to compare. It's what it means to the individual.
100%.
And to know that there's something like StrongMen out there. And I must admit, as I'm sure we all are, particularly for men, it's the leading cause of self-harm and suicide for men under the age of 40. That's a fact, and I think it's so important to have and be open about, as much as we can, not compare our hard times to others.
It's not top trumps. Yeah,
it's not.
This is one of the things that used to frustrate the hell out of me. Is people would say, like you say, oh yeah. 25 years ago, I lost my great-grand's neighbour's cat's dog, and you're like, so what? So it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. And I think with things like this, it's like you say, it's not just what you say; it's what you don't say. It's just as important. And I think, it just affects everybody at some stage. That's the thing. We all, and it's so frustrating with this sort of side of things, and it really is difficult to try and, because people are just trying to do their best. They're trying to do that Instagram quote that brings you out of this. It goes, yeah, do you know what? You're right. I'm happy now. Let's get on with this. And it doesn't work like that. The whole process takes many months and years, and truly you never get over it. We'll never get over the loss. And the same with you. You'll never get over that sort of side of things. It's knowing that there's people to go to who understand it when you need to. And that, obviously, StrongMen's there. It's there for everybody at any time, Joe. So have a look and see how that all works. Absolutely. Because it is, as I say, it is there. And it does work really well. And with everything that we do, there's always improvements that can be made. There's always things that you learn from. There's always things where you think, yeah, that worked, that didn't work. When you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with individuals, and you're dealing with relationships, it's a learning process, and it does that. We're just trying to help, but by doing that, we also need to improve what we do and develop it as we go. And Dan and I are committed to doing that. We're not experts. It's something we've put together and it works, but we know it needs to be tweaked. We know we need to do stuff, and we're not arrogant or ignorant to say that this is the way it's going to be and this is what we're going to go forwards with. Because say you two are young guys, but there are older guys, there are younger guys, there are real young guys. And as you were saying with those statistics, it's quite clear at the moment that things aren't working and there's too many people harming themselves. So things need to change. And I think there's always this old cliche we go back to when people say, you've got to be strong. They wouldn't have wanted you to be sad and all that stuff. Yeah, of course not. Of course not. But it's like, do you think that James wanted to die? Do you think if he thought he was going to die, he would have done that? Of course not. So it's one of the most ridiculous things that people can say is, it's not what he would have wanted. It's not what she would have wanted. Of course not. Absolutely, of course not. But that's completely irrelevant, because that's what's happened. And now we've got to try and deal with where you are with everything that's happened, and it's just difficult. It's one of those things. It's not like, when I had the diagnosis for my cancer, it didn't bother me one bit. Because again, it was comparing it to what had happened before. If I'd had a heart monitor on, people say being told you've got cancer is the worst thing in the world. I tell you now, it's not, because the doctor said to me, right, this is what you can do. Here's your options. And there's 3 or 4 options, but this is what I would do. And I went, you're the doctor. If that's what you think I should do, that's what we're going to do. And he said, this, and you should be fine, and blah, blah, blah. And here I am 4 years later, 3-4 years later, touch wood, everything's fine. So there were options for me. But when someone dies, there's nothing. There are no options. You can do nothing about it. And that finite thing, I think it's all of those things. When you look at it and you think about it, it's like, but I'll never see them again. I'll never be able to talk to them again. I'll never be able to tell my mum, or she'll never be able to see me have kids or get married or anything. I just never, the one person you think, it's like with all of these things, it's with the SAS thing, the one person I would have chatted to about it and laughed about it would have been James, because he would have ribbed me something solid. And it would have been great, but I couldn't, and I knew that. And that's the hard part, it's just that little thing. It's that connection. It's that thing where you think, I'd love to tell my mum about that, or I'd love to tell my son about it. I just love to talk to, just for 5 minutes, say, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, and you can't. So you've got to try and do something, haven't you, to get all of that out. I write a diary every day, and I write down everything I've done. So one day, my daughter can read it, or their kids can read it, or even I can read it, or maybe he can read it, and it's there because you forget things. But if I write it every day, how it is, how I've thought, what I've done, what I want to do, where I want to go, it's there. It can't be forgotten, and it's written in the emotion of the time, whether that be, it can be anything completely mundane from today. I took the dogs for the walk, blah, 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 made a cake, whatever. But then it's the other stuff, the deeper stuff, where you write it down and you're dealing with your emotions, which can be really raw at some stages. And then a few days later, it's completely changed, and then you'll read it back and you go, blimey. And you kind of forget these things. So I find writing the diary is such a great journal of the whole, of me and how I felt. And if I look back at that in 10, 15, 20 years, it will be interesting to see where I am. And hopefully I've continued to have written it and see, how that journey has evolved. I may never read it, because I think I've already got about 6 or 7 diaries, so I'll probably never read them, but they're there, and it helps me every day, and those little things help.
One of the things resonated with me that you were saying is about, it's not going to go away, and it made me think, like, we're not just going to be communicating with people that have gone through the same thing. Often we will never meet someone who's had the exact same experience and look at a loss or any experience in our life the same. But I read something a few months ago about how I think it was an article about a young guy who lost a parent quite young, and he said, this is what I say about when I try to describe that emotion to others who haven't experienced bereavement or something similar. And the story he said was something that I think a lot of people can relate to, and it's that time when maybe you're a toddler or, you know, under 10 years old and you've lost your mum in the supermarket. That feeling in an instant is how you feel all the time. And I think that was the most profound way, or something that resonated so much with me. I've just had to say it to you guys. Whether you feel the same about that or not, I don't know. But
it's that whirling dervish thing, isn't it? I mean, for me, I remember just walking around. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say to other people. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was just like, it's like, for me, it was like running headfirst as fast as I can into a brick wall, and that whole dazed and confused, and you find yourself supporting other people. That's the thing, because people, for me, were falling to pieces around me. Not necessarily the close family, but friends and distant. And you're sat there going, "What the hell?" And you're trying to help them, and then you're thinking, "But I need."
What about me?
It's what about me? Yeah, and I'm convinced. Yeah, my cancer is stress related. I'm 100% convinced, because prostate cancer tends to run in the genes. It affects black guys worse than white guys, and you need to be in that usually in your 70s and 80s, that sort of thing. So it came out of nowhere for me, and I'm convinced it was stress, and it was that trying to sort everything else out. When you just wound so tight, you don't even realise you're stressed, because that's just become who you are every day. And you take it out on your body, and your body kind of breaks down. It can only do so much, and I'm convinced that's what my result was, because you say that sort of panic and confusion, and it's just a weird. And I can almost, just talking about it now, I can almost feel it. I felt a little headache start just there as I'm talking about it, and it's like that whole Jesus. It's just, you never want to go through stuff like that, and you never want anyone to go through stuff like that. And people can't, I think people are scared to know what it's like as well. So if you say that to people, I think they almost don't listen, and unless you've experienced it, you don't get it. And thank God you don't get it. I wish I'd never had to. And the chances are, as you say, in life, we all will. But it's like nothing else. It's just awful experience.
Efrem, if you could speak to yourself now as you were at your lowest a few years ago, or the days you still suffer, or the moments that you find the hardest, what would you say to yourself? Because I can't ask you to say what would you say to someone who's going through it right now, because like we say, we don't know their situation. But what would you say to yourself when you were really at that low point?
I mean, there's always a light. There's always a light. The tunnel may be longer on some days than it is on others, and there's always positives, whatever that happens to be. I mean, things like StrongMen wouldn't have happened if James was still here. Other things, there's been other benefits, other things that have come out of it that wouldn't have happened. So there are positives. I mean, overall, obviously, it's still, I'd rather it hadn't happened. But I would say to myself, look, you are going to be all right. There is a life, there's still there, there's still opportunities there, and use that experience that you've got to help yourself, to help others, and you'll be a lot of you will be a better person. You'll be more empathetic, you'll be more patient, your dynamic will have changed in terms of what you want to do with life. I mean, when James was here, I used to have a 6-figure salary, a really good job, all of this sort of side of things, looking for the holidays, all that. But it almost ended overnight, or shortly after that period, where all that ambition had sort of gone, and you realise that there are definitely more important things to life. I'm not saying I was ignorant to that at the time, but I wasn't as aware how your own well-being, the well-being of your close family around you, the well-being of your children, your wife. Life takes effort on both sides. If you want a relationship to work, you've both got to put the effort in, and you've both got to want to put the effort in. And sometimes the balance, things become unbalanced just as you go through life because of your ambitions, and jobs can take over and all these things. So being almost forced to take that time out and rebalance everything is a good thing. So that's, again, is one of the benefits. But I would definitely sit myself down and just say, you're going to be all right. There's still a reason for being around. So many people love you. So many people depend on you. And I hate to use the word inspire, but you can help to try and inspire people a little bit and try and help them. Because, I think it's always great when you see celebrities, and take someone like Rio Ferdinand, and no disrespect to him whatsoever when he lost his wife. But he doesn't live in the real world. He's got a beautiful house, he's got staff, he's got lots of money coming in. If he has he's got this beautiful gym, he's got nannies, he's got dietitians, he's got, his life is very different to Dave, who's a painter and decorator, who goes through the same thing, for example, who still has a mortgage to pay, still has to go and paint people's houses, even though his wife might have died 2 weeks ago, because people will be patient for a point in time, but then they'll be back on and banging. So the reality of normal people is very different to that other sort of side of things. And whereas people say, I think they're so brave to talk openly about it, yes, they are, by highlighting it, but it's for the average people. And I think when people see average people like Dan and myself and what we've been through and where we are, I think it's a lot more real than the other sort of side of things as well. And also it can be detrimental, because you can see someone like a Rio Ferdinand going, well, how come he's all right? He's managed to remarry. Everything's okay for him, but for me, everything's fallen to pieces, and I'm drinking too much, and I've got a gambling addiction, and I can't stop eating burgers. So the reality of normal life is very, very different. And I think it's good to have the reminder that actually, there are options out there for people. So I would say there is an opportunity to inspire people. I hate the word because it makes you sound big-headed, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But there's an opportunity for people to, take some strength from your strength, and to take some leadership from your leadership, and all of those sort of side of things, and say, do you know what, I've met Efrem. I would never have known what he's been through. And, it's the same with Murray at the gym. It's the same with all these people. When people have been through stuff like that, there's that reality to them. There's just that it's not fake. It is what it is, and it's there for all to see. And if anyone ever wants to ask me anything, I might not have an answer, but I'll always try and answer it, and I'll always try and help as best as I can. I may not be able to, but I'll always try. So it's a very long-winded answer to the question, but sort of I would have just said, be yourself, carry on, you're going to be all right, basically.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So I do want to steer towards some more positive reinforcement chat, but what we'll do is we're going to take a turn and really go before we get there. Efrem, when you were at your worst on the inside, how bad were you mentally?
I had a moment when it all built up to its worst. I'd been in a big company as a sales director of a big company turning over multi-millions, and I was responsible for that. We had a conference in this new, lovely, wonderful London showroom on let's say it was a Wednesday or a Thursday, I can't remember which day it was. And I remember sat there, completely numb to all this. Everyone was smiling and high-fiving and all of that rubbish. And I'm sat there going, this is just utter bullshit, and I don't want to be here. So we went out the night, did the usual sort of corporate thing, had a few beers, woke up the next day, had breakfast. It was a nice day in London, so I thought I'd walk, and we were somewhere around Old Street was where we were, so in the city. And it was a lovely day, and I thought I'd walk across because I had to go over the Thames on the Tate Modern to the Tate Modern area to an architectural practice there. And I remember as I was walking, and the walk took probably about an hour, maybe an hour and a bit. I remember walking, I remember my fingers started going a bit numb, and I was getting, when you get that build up of something's not right. And I didn't really know what it was. And as I got to the bridge, and I remember it, it's that new Millennium Bridge. So it's a footpath, and it's about, I don't know, 10 metres wide, and it's a lovely thing. And as I say, as you walk over, you've got the tape model in front of you. And I remember I couldn't see over the sides. I couldn't see the water. It's like it had become a tunnel. And I didn't know what was happening to me. And I didn't know if I was going to get to the other side. And it scared the living shit out of me. So I got to the other side. That walk would usually take me 3-4 minutes, and it took me a lot longer, maybe 15 minutes. So I made it to the other side, and I went into the tape modern, and I found the toilets, and I just sat in the toilets for probably about half an hour, and I had nothing, literally nothing left. It was just gone. And I thought, I've got to make some changes to my life. I've got to change things. And it was at that point that I realised I had to stop doing the job I was doing because it was killing me. And I needed to really positively change everything about that aspect of my professional life, because it just wasn't working for me. So it was at that moment that I knew I had to change it. So I spoke to my wife, I rang my wife, and I said what had happened, that I was all right. And then we obviously needed to have a chat. So we had a chat when I got home, and I'm blessed that she's so understanding, because obviously I was giving up a job, to say, that paid me 6 figures. So we had a real great lifestyle, but she knew that it was what it was doing to me and that I had to change it. And she supported me 100%. And I said, I'm taking however long it is off. And it worked. It turned out to be about 6 to 8 months of unpaid work. Well, it helped me set up StrongMen Service on a voluntary basis. And that was the worst moment, as I say, and I didn't know what was happening to me because I've never experienced anything like that. And it just came out of nowhere. Now, I've spoken to other people since who've had similar experiences, albeit obviously all slightly different. Is that just everything went, just before you faint, that sort of thing. And it all obviously just became too much for me. And I think my brain was just all over the shop.
Yeah, wow.
It was really weird. I've never experienced anything like it since, thank God. And I've never been to that where you think, I don't know what's happening, I don't know why it's happening, and I don't like it, and there's nothing I could do about it. Because if you break your leg or something, that you've got to go to the hospital. I just didn't know why it was happening. It was weird.
The only thing you can do now is talk about it, because then, like you say, the more you talk about it, even as hard as it is, you're finding other people that have been through it, and they're questioning why they're going through it, and they're questioning, am I the only one that's had this experience, regardless of the bereavement. Yeah. But the actual experience itself can shake a human to the last nerve. It really can. So if we can talk about those...
Because the bereavement's the catalyst. Well, the bereavement's almost the catalyst to that must have been... I'm saying it's probably about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago now. It probably is about 2 years ago. So that would have been 5 years after James died. And obviously I'd had... Cancer was a real bugger. It really was. I mean, the operation that I had and the recovery and what it physically did to me, my body to recover it, because I just wouldn't accept that I couldn't do stuff. That was the worst part of it. I wouldn't accept that I couldn't go for a run. I wouldn't accept these things. So I made myself worse. And it took a lot out of me physically. Hell of a lot out of me physically. And again, I didn't let myself recover from that side of things, because whenever you have something like that and you're treated for cancer, you never come back as the same person. You're never the same in some capacity, whether that's physically, mentally, or both. It just, knowing that you've had an illness that could kill you is a weird thing, and not even know you've got it. It undermines your confidence. It undermines your ability to do stuff that you've always been able to do. I mean, I'm one of those, a bit like you. It's just like, I know I can run 10 miles. It may hurt me, but I know I can do it. But I couldn't. And it's for the first time ever. It's just like, you cannot do this. You're making yourself really, really ill. And it's just like, but why? I don't understand it. And that vulnerability and that confidence, lack of confidence it gives you is just unbelievable. And that built and built and built. And I did nothing about it. And that's the culmination. I mean, I've got a mate at the moment who's going through a very, very similar thing. And he said, this is what's happened. And I said, well, this is what happened to me, mate. And he was just like, well, it's the same thing, but slightly different in terms of how it, his experience was different in terms of his, the physical experience of that whole bridge thing was different. But the whole overall, it was like, I'm not going to call it's a breakdown. That's not what it is. But it's just culminated at that point. You are now at the brink. you've got to do something. Whether that's reach out for help, whether that's change something, whatever it is, you've got to do something about it. You cannot just ignore this any longer. So you're right, you have to start that talking process. You have to start that with your family, with your friends, with professionals, with other people who might have experienced it. Because, in the nicest way, when you talk about stuff like this, I mean, if anyone's listening, or when people, hopefully someone will listen to this, but when they do, you're not going to say, Efrem, is he some sort of a pussy? You're going to say, no, he's not, is he? Of course he's not. Look at what he's been through. So it's not weak.
He's the hardest bastard
really,
I've ever
really
met.
isn't. And when you say to people, it isn't. So you just got to get that out of the whole, forget that word, because it's not. You're just trying to help. There's nothing weak in being aware that you need help and being aware that things aren't right. It's common sense, isn't it?
You don't cease to amaze me, because you've been through the emotional torture and living it day by day, and you've had the physical torture of prostate cancer as well, and you still find the strength to go, you know what, I'm going to co-fund this incredible charity and make sure that others, we can't stop them going through what they're going, but just be there for them when they do. So that's just, I can't give you enough kudos. I can't say, I know you hate the word inspire, but I'm sure Joe will agree with me. It's one of the most inspirational things you'll ever hear, because there were millions of people before you that have been through bereavement, but none of them have turned around and said, what can I do next to make sure there's a little more support for someone? And
I think there's a strength in numbers thing, and it was obviously with Dan's help, and it was Dan and me, and that's easier. It's when there's more of you, that sort of band of brothers, then it makes life easier. But we do. I mean, at the end of last year, we sat down and worked out everything we'd done with the charity since we started. You're like, bloody hell, we've done well. And when you go to people and you tell them what you've done and where you are, they're like, bloody hell, you two have done well. And you sat there going, yeah, we have actually. Little pat on the back. But then you crack on with it, because you've got so much more to do. Because the job is never done. Never, ever, ever done. There's always somebody else that you can reach. There's always something that can be done. And we're acutely aware of that. And it is great. And I get the inspiring thing, and it's very kind of people, but it does make me embarrassed, because that's not why we do it. We don't do it for that sort of pat on the back thing. But sometimes it's nice to have it, definitely, because it just proves that you're going in the right direction. But it is, so many people that we've helped, and we're empowering them, and there is nothing better. We're like when we do one of our weekends, we're like mum and dad watching our kids grow and watching them develop and watching them gather strength, and you sit them around, you're listening to them chatting, and huge great smiles on our face. It's priceless. It really is. There is no price that you could put on that, seeing people happy that have been in a really, really dark place.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say to that.
If anything, when Charles said about being inspired, I think for anyone listening to this, I think myself included, that I am, and I hope others are too, to be inspired to talk. And I think that's. I think we've all said it at one point or another today. It's so important, because you're loved, and more often than not, it's not a sign of never is it a sign of weakness, and there are people there for you.
It definitely isn't. I mean, I still have to remind myself as well, because it's an ongoing process. You have to continue that as well. And if at some stage, I mean, I think it was Monday, I said to Sharon, to my wife, I said, I just don't feel good today for whatever reason. Everything just didn't feel right. And she was like, okay, first of all, thanks for letting me know, because there's nothing worse than, I'm in a mood. She comes up, what's the matter with you? Nothing's the matter. Yeah, I'm fine. Just leave it. And it's like, what good is that? Who is that helping? Nobody. Yeah. Whereas now she's like, do you know what? Yeah, I get that. Have you tried this? What about this? Why don't you, like, all these things? And then come Tuesday, I started to feel better. and so on and so on and so on. So you've got to continue that as well. So if you start it, and if you're not happy with the person you are, just make sure you keep going and keep, because as soon as you start it, that's the hard part. Just keep asking and keep going, because let's say no one at anybody's going to go, shut up, Dave, you tart. They're just not. They're going to go, do you know what, mate? I can't really help you. It's not something I can do. But why don't you talk to StrongMen, or why don't we go for a walk, or why don't we do this, that, and the other? It's just like I can't empathise with where you are, but I'll definitely listen to you and listen. Actually listen.
I think something you said there was so important about how it's a continuous conversation. It's not, I'll talk to someone and then I'll be okay, or you'll talk to someone who's going through a hard time and they'll be okay. It's something that doesn't and shouldn't stop or cease to happen. Sorry, Charles.
That's all right. No, don't be
butting into you every 10 minutes.
No, it's fine, because it's probably the hardest conversation and the hardest subject to talk about. And I hope that the people that end up listening or watching this do take away something from it, because I know I have. Joe, I know you have as well. So let's move forward to this year. Efrem, as you know, I've decided to take on, should we say, a rather large and silly event with the...
Silly.
So again, those listening, I'm going to run a half marathon.
They better not cancel it. It better not be COVID cancelled, because I'm still going to make you do it.
That's fine. If you're going to be there, then that's fine. So for those listening, I'm going to run a half marathon first thing in the morning, and COVID permitting, I will have as many as COVID friendly possible, run any section or any distance they want within that half marathon first thing. Now, I believe the strongman event that I'll be entering will start about 9 a.m, so we better lace up and hit the road about, well, go at my pace, probably about the night before. So we're going to do I'll see you at the start line with a coffee at 4. So we're going to do a half marathon first. And ideally, I just want to get people talking along the way. I want to get people, to give them something over the next few months to aim for. So a half marathon is no mean feat by any stretch of imagination. So to have that to aim for, I think if anyone within the strongmen community would like to take part, please let them know that it's going down, because I will be raising funds for the charity, as you know, because it's quite, unfortunately, it got even closer to my heart as of 4 weeks ago today. So there's nothing I wouldn't do for it. So I will run through brick walls, I will lift up weights during the day in the strongman competition. And in the evening, I thought I would complete another half marathon. And if I'm honest, that's the one, Efrem, I'd really like you to be there for, because I think you hate running as much as I do. And, and if I'm going through, I'm going to use the terminology.
If you're going down, I'm going down.
I will use the terminology self-induced physical pain. But what I wanted to do is to use the platform of the next 6 months to raise as much awareness. You know, raising money is fantastic. If I can do that along the way, then that's incredible. And if I can just raise awareness so other people can find out about your incredible charity and the things that you're doing, and knowing that there are people out there going through, not the same, but going through some form of similar difficulties, that they're there, then I'd absolutely be honoured to do that for you guys. Now, what I'd absolutely love is like I say, for as many of you guys to train for the half marathon in the morning, or specifically we could dedicate the evening marathon, which is going to be the hardest, for people coming from the StrongMen UK. So you can literally run it as an event yourself, starting from probably when I don't get a medal. We'll see everyone else get a medal at the Strongman comp. I'll have a Lucozade.
Captain Cramp.
Yeah. Captain Cramp will set off with a bottle of Lucozade, probably 16 Red Bulls, some Jelly Babies, and let's say that evening one for the StrongMen UK, I'm sure I'll probably have some other incredible people from the Woodpecker community join me, but I'd love for you to go out and tell your lot, let's train for a half marathon in the summer. It's going to be a nice evening. If COVID allows it, we can either have a beer after, we can have fish and chips on the beach. You know, it's down in Lancing, one of the lovely places. We can either run to Brighton or we can go to Worthing, wherever we want to go. We've got 6 months to plan it, but what we can do is use this time as a platform to raise that specific event for your guys. So what I've noticed now is lockdown's hard because we don't see the end result, but if we can give ourselves something to work towards, like a set target, like a half marathon or something like that, then all of a sudden you forget about the external pressures that work's bringing you, not leaving the house, maybe bringing, if you're working from home, and you go, today I need to hit a 5k and I need to buy some running shoes, I need to distract myself. And people within the StrongMen can then talk to each other about not the difficulties they go, but how's your training going? You know, how's your running going? Are you excited by it? So do you think that's something that you would you'd like to be a part of in the evening?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ride my bike next to you along the half marathon. That sounds like a really good thing. We could do like a Rocky thing, can't we? I'll have a bit of steak on the string. I'll ride just in front of you. Come on, Charles.
But yeah, I mean,
do you know, I will do it just to see you suffer, because I saw you suffer just before Christmas. That was horrendous, and that was 10 miler.
Yeah, so yeah, we did just before lockdown. December 19th it was, the CrossFit gym we go to, White Hart, they had a Christmas workout called Covis, ironically enough. And Covis, as a WOD, for those listening in from the CrossFit world, WOD, obviously workout of the day, you can partition it however you like, but you have to achieve a 10-mile run and 150 burpee pull-ups. It's as simple as that. It's 2 exercises and you can do it however you like. The guy at White Hart, they were just like, no, that's not good enough. You've got to run the 10 miles. That's your buy-in. Then you must do the 150 burpee pull-ups. So with, a good summer of basic fitness, but 0 mileage ran, we rocked up and Efrem and I put the 10 miles under our legs in 90 minutes, so I was pretty chuffed with my time.
Wow.
And I turned around and saw a guy in his what are you, late 40s, early 50s, around there.
I'm 48. Yeah.
There you go. Giving me the pep talk about, I hate running, it's just 1 foot in front of the other. And I go, I hate running too. We finished it together and I'm thinking, that's all right, I'll get him on the burpee pull-ups. And he beat me by 30 seconds.
The funniest thing of all was straight after you said you're going to do some deadlifts, got the bar out, put a load of weights on, and they never moved.
I did 1 rep
until you put them back.
I did 1 rep at 100, and I thought maybe
no thanks.
No, it's choosing your battles and understanding that. Let's take that as a metaphor. Understanding when to stop, and it was difficult, but you know that was a real insight to running next to someone and just going, right, we're both on a similar path here. We literally were on the same path. We had 3 miles to go and we just looked at each other and had that agreement. 3 miles, 2.9 miles. This is heartache, but we can do it.
But do you remember we said it'll be all right, we'll get to that corner, then we'll get to the bridge, then we'll get to the traffic lights, and then there was all those bloody cars. But we've got to finish it in 90 minutes, and we did just. But the cramp on those burpee pull-ups, they were something else, weren't they?
So it was, and if you look at it like that, for anyone going through any of their struggles, be it mental health related, bereavement, you have got to take it small goals, step by step. Set that target for a week away. Set that for tomorrow. Tell yourself you're going to write a diary. It is wag the
tail again. 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, and then that can come down again, because it does. Times are hard, anniversaries in particular, birthdays, or whatever it is in terms of where you are with stuff. Just break it down. Do not think too far in advance, because you overthink things, and that's where things can become real challenges. So it works for me just to do it that way. Live through the day, write down what you've done, move on.
As a woodpecker, I'm going to say you've got to keep chipping, but it's exactly the same thing. And grin and bear it. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing some of the things you've been through and some of the incredible things you are doing, and I'm really looking forward to working with the charity for the next 6 months. I know I'm going to need your support for Lucas aids at miles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. But
6
when we
half,
can,
7.5,
yeah, it will increase. But
7 3/4.
but when we get to the end, we'll have a pint of the finest. I'm an ale man.
Oh, yeah, me too. Think of sunshine, fish and chips. Oh, and an ale. Nice IPA, actually. And
Well, Hepworth. Well, we can go to Hepworth down the road. That's between us.
Up the road, yeah.
I'll tell them what we're
lovely.
doing, and I'm sure they'll give us a crate. We'll get them on board. But actually, I think that would be the perfect way to kind of finish that event and just to have that time to reflect about everything that's going on in the journey. So, thank you so much.
And how much we both hate running.
Yeah, that's never going to change. That's never going to change. Keep chipping.